So welcome everybody to AgrAbility's National Training Workshop Encore webinars. Today's session is Building Capacity for Farm Stress with Jennifer Dunn and Benjamin Reeves. So a little bit about AgrAbility. It is a USDA-sponsored program that assists farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural workers with disabilities. It partners land-grant universities with disability service organizations. There are currently 21 state projects. The National AgrAbility Project is led by Purdue's Breaking New Ground Resource Center, and the partners include Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, the Osteoarthritis Action Alliance, AgriSafe Network, Colorado State University, Washington State University. There is more information available at agrability.org. Our presenters today are Jennifer Dunn and Benjamin Reeves. Jennifer is currently serving as the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. She previously worked as the University of Georgia's Rural Health Agent for Southwest District of UGA Extension. She earned both her bachelor's and master's degrees in Child and Family Development from the University of Georgia in 1996 and 2001, respectively. Jennifer is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a recipient of the Intensive Cognitive Behavior Therapy for Schizophrenia certification at the Aaron T. Beck Institute for Cognitive Behavior Therapy in Philadelphia, a trainer for mental health first aid and QPR, question, persuade, and refer, to assist with suicide prevention. Before beginning her position with UGA Extension, Jennifer worked for the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities for 16 years, where she served as the Regional Services Administrator for the 24 counties located in the southwestern portion of the state. In her current role, Jennifer is helping advance the vision and mission of the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities in the southern part of the state, with a focus on rural communities. She is also an advisory board member for the Georgia Department of Community Health State Office of Rural Health and their Georgia Farm Worker Healthcare Program. Benjamin Reeves is originally from Birmingham, Alabama. He studied horticulture at Auburn University, followed by entomology at the University of Georgia. He started working for UGA Extension in 2018 in Candler County and moved to Berrien County in 2019. Benjamin works in several cropping systems, including cotton, peanut, tobacco, and watermelon. In his downtime, he enjoys weightlifting, seeing live music, and hanging out with his dog, Ringo. So I would like to turn it over, if I can get my computer.
All right, I'm going to share.
Yeah, take it away because I can't get mine to stop sharing.
Okay. Let's see.
There we go. All right.
Do you see it?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, good. So I'm going to actually, after hearing that long introduction, I'm going to pare mine down, and I'm going to talk about my 5 dogs that, because that way when Ben and I present together, and we can talk about his dog Ringo. But thank you so much for having us come today. Again, my name's Jennifer Dunn. Ben's with me, and we worked together at UGA. I went back to another job, and but I'm still doing this work. So I'm going to advance the slide. Let's see here. Did it advance, Tess? Can you just give me a thumbs up? Okay, Ben, yes. Okay.
Yes, it did.
So I could tell y'all, so there are some slides we have in here. We did this presentation back in March at the AgrAbility conference, but I think everybody knows what do we consider rural. I put some definitions up here. I'd rather get to kind of what is rural in Georgia, because that's where Ben and I work. So this is a little bit more about rural Georgia. We have seen a little bit of a decline in our rural populations in the last, I'd say, 4 years. And I don't know if that is something that other states are seeing. I do think we have a lot of people that are moving to Georgia's like the 8th fastest growing state in the country. But a lot of people that are moving to Georgia are moving to the metro Atlanta area. And so it's just kind of sprawling outward from there. A little bit about our ag facts in Georgia. So agriculture is the number one industry in Georgia. It beats 2 and 3 combined. Just so you know that the average age of a farmer in Georgia is 59.8, and only 2% of Georgians actually contribute to that number one business. So one of the things when I'm talking to groups of people, I feel pressure when I say that. When I say we only have a very small group of people contributing to this very large industry, and then the average age of a producer is 59.8, that feels kind of stressful to me. I don't know about y'all. Um, we do have some national commodity rankings. Georgia's number one in broilers, peanuts, and pecans. A lot of people say pecans, and if I'm in a meeting in Georgia and I'm with a bunch of growers, I always ask them how do they say it. So Ben, how do you say it?
Pecan.
So it always starts a nice little discussion. We do grow a lot of cotton, watermelon, cantaloupe. Obviously, peaches, we're the peach state, but I have heard that South Carolina actually grows more peaches than we do. Is that true, Ben? You're nodding. Yep. Okay. We are moving up in the blueberry field. So just, kind of anything you want to add to that, Ben? Knowing this is.
Oh, no, I think that covers it.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you how we got started, and then feel free to jump in. But we had a hurricane in 2018, and I was working for the Department of Behavioral Health. And this was the biggest hurricane to hit the continental United States. And it did not come through the Savannah area, which is coastal Georgia. You can see on the slide there. It actually came up through southwest Georgia, and it was devastating. And my dad is a grower. He grows cotton, peanuts, and corn. And I started getting calls from him, from some of his friends. I was getting calls from ag agents like Ben. I was getting calls from banks, because banks were calling people in, or farmers were going into banks to talk about whether or not they had crop insurance. Many of them did not. It was going to be a stellar year for cotton that year. And it was, and if you were a timber farmer, or you had pecan groves, it just got decimated, especially in that southwest corner where we do have a lot of timber. Florida also was struggling. I'm sure there's some folks on the meeting today that are from that area. So that's how it started. I got a call. I started getting lots of calls. Like, how do we talk about this? So me and a group of folks from the University of Georgia sat down with a local hospital. So we had ag agents like Ben. You had me from the Department of Behavioral Health. We had a local hospital and a few other folks that just said, how do we address this? What do we do? How do you walk into a meeting with a group of farmers and just start talking about, do you need help? And we realized really quickly that if we walked in with farmers and say, we're here from, we're the mental health people, and, we're here to talk to you, that was not going to go over well. My dad used to say, oh, good job, like good try, but that's not going to work. So we came up with what we called the Southwest Rural Stress Partnership. So one thing farmers would talk about was stress. And so the first year in 2019, we picked 3 counties in Southwest Georgia. We had an average of attendance of about 97 farmers, and these were the ag production meetings. And Ben, if you wouldn't mind, just a quick overview of what an ag production meeting is.
Okay, an ag production meeting, we do several in the winter, in the down season. And basically the way we are set up is we have state specialists. Like, for example, you have a cotton entomologist who just focus on cotton insect pest management, or a cotton agronomist, cotton economist. And we do these production meetings, and the state specialists who are located in either Tifton or Athens, they come and travel to these rural locations across the state. And the value of it is it's really important to have these state specialists in front of farmers in just different pockets of the area, to where they can kind of discuss the problems they're having.
Yeah.
They're really important, and they're really important for just general extension programs.
Yeah, these are great meetings. The farmers get pesticide credits. So, and there's food. And so they show up for both of those things. They want to get their pesticide credits, and it's a good, kind of peer mentoring. They're sitting with their, they know the other farmer that lives down the street from them. And so we decided we were going to try me going into 3 counties. I also worked with the health department. So we contacted a local health department and we went in with the health department. And so what we would do is we would set up a little table where when the farmers would walk in, we would offer free blood pressure screening because we know that farmers likely have high blood pressure. At least that's what some of the data we found showed. So we started doing the blood pressure checks, and we had this folder right here, and it's called Rural Georgia Growing Stronger. And this is actually a Georgia family right here. And inside the folder is things about blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure. And what we do is behind all of that stuff, we put all the mental health resources. We have a flyer. I'll hold it up here. It's 6 steps to ag recovery. And we did this with the Department of Agriculture in Georgia and with the Department of Public Health. So we have these, and so the first meeting I went to, I had the folders on the table in the bag, and nobody picked them up because nobody wanted to be the person that was going to get the mental health ladies folder. So I realized really quickly I needed to put them underneath. So at each person's, where they sit at the table, where their pesticide credits are and their sign-in sheets and all that, I just slide it up under there so they can just kind of grab the folder, and pick it up and go. One of the things that happened though at the end of that the first 3 meetings is we did see about a little more than half after that first meeting, we saw a little more than half of folks picking up the informational folders. And the other big thing that was interesting is I started getting phone calls. So I would give out we have a 1-800 number for mental health services in Georgia, but a lot of people don't want to call a random 1-800 number, but they, met me and said, I'll call her. I should say that what I do when I go into these meetings is I ask everybody, who is stressed out? So before you have the economist or the agronomist or the entomologist or whoever stands up, I just stand up and say, who got your blood pressure checked? And about half the room raises their hand, and I'll say, who's stressed out? And, almost everybody raises their hand when I ask that question. And then I ask them, what stresses you out? And they would say things like, 100% of the time they say weather, and 100% of the time they say something to do with money. It could be input prices, it could be commodity prices, it could be inflation, it could be labor cost, it could be, what am I forgetting, Ben? All
of the weather.
I said weather. Yep.
Okay.
And we're hearing it right now.
Low commodity prices.
Yep. Low commodity prices. Yep. So 100% of the time I would hear those things. I would hear some other things, but those are things that they were really, worried about. And if you think about it, a lot of those things are outside of their control. So it's stuff that they can't control. And then I would ask them, well, what do you do to relieve stress? And they would say 100% of the time they would say pray. And they'd also say drink. Somebody in the room would say something about drinking. It would be, somebody might yell out their beverage of choice. And then somebody might yell something out that is kind of funny and people start laughing. And so we talk about humor as a way of stress relief. I also will introduce the Navy SEALs box breathing and things like that. And then I have them, because one guy on one side of the room might say, well, I like to hunt and fish. Or somebody might say, I like to ride my motorcycle, because I want the guy on the other side of the room to hear that, because they might get ideas from each other. So I'm trying to elicit those kinds of responses. And then I, let them know that it is a stressful business, and I keep it very high level. It's a very short thing. That's one of the things the ag agents told me was don't talk for a long time. Yes. I don't come in and talk about suicide unless they bring it up. Right. So I don't come in and go straight to that. But what the slide up here shows you is that we did expand in 2021, and 2020 and 2021, COVID, we weren't having our meetings. So in 2022, we added 3 more counties. And we started, doing some surveys about, hey, before the meeting, did you think about your stress? Did you ever think about it? And then after the meeting, what are you thinking about it now? Are you willing to do something different? And we're seeing a lot of good results from that. I'm also getting calls after each meeting. And, one of the guys stopped me at one of the meetings and said, I just never thought I'd be at a production meeting and somebody would ask me about my stress. The fact that y'all care enough to ask is a good thing. And so, and some of the calls that I get afterwards, it could be anything from somebody needing just help with maybe a family member got a cancer diagnosis and they're feeling a little upset about that, maybe have some depression. But I do get some calls where folks are thinking about suicide. So unfortunately, I guess I'm glad they're calling. So that is a good thing that they're reaching out for help. But it does, kind of break my heart a little bit that that's where folks are. And so we're trying to offer hope and help. In this year, we added a statewide tobacco meeting because in Georgia we have, how many counties do we have that grow tobacco? Ben, do you remember?
There's probably about 15 to 20.
Yeah. And so we did the statewide tobacco meeting, and then we added a few new counties. And when I had put this together for the March presentation, I had spoken to about 1,200 farmers. At this point, I'm up to about almost 2,000. It was 1,800 when I counted last month. So we're continuing this work where we're going into these counties and, just offering, this is the resources. I will say, I'll just give you an example of Tift County. That was a new county this year. So I went into the Tift County meeting this year and I did my little spiel. It was the first time I'd been in that county, so I kept it quick. It was very high level. But one of the farmers said, well, what do we do if someone calls us and they're thinking about suicide? So a farmer went there. So I was like, okay, we can talk about that. And I always tell people if this hits a little too close to home and you need to step out, that's fine. We can talk later. But there was a farmer in an adjacent county that had taken their life the year before, and he was worried. And one thing we know is that farmers, they have what we call trusted resources. So they talk to other farmers, their spouses, and faith leaders. So a lot of times what I'll tell the folks is, hey, the information I'm giving you, maybe you don't think it's for you, but it could be for one of your friends. What if one of them call you? So I'm going to pause there and see if, Ben, you want to add anything. I've been to his county. I asked him to do this with me twice. We added him in 23. And then we did it again in his county in 24. So anything you want to add about the production meetings and what we do?
Other than what I was going to talk about in my section.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add.
I was going to cover that kind of my little section there.
Perfect. Okay. So like I mentioned before, we had Hurricane Michael, and then we had Hurricane Idalia, which Ben's going to talk about in a minute. We've also had the avian flu, which other states I know have had, and then just the annual stress of, uncertain crop production. And we always ask, who is caring for the caregiver? So we do have some studies that are informing us. The first study that you see is one that was done by a good friend of mine, Chrissy Proctor and Noah Hopkins at UGA. It was published in the Journal of Rural Mental Health, and it was actually called "It's Easier to Go to the Beer Store Than to Ask for Help." And she was doing some of this work at the same time that I'm out there, having my meetings. And so I was very interested in this work. It's a qualitative study that she did. Dr. Anna Chayette has kind of been my mentor and good friend throughout this process. She has done probably the lion's share of a lot of the research that we're talking about, and anything that I'm doing, that I'm talking about, she's been our lead in that work. Then we also have on the far side of the screen, we did the stuff that I'm talking about with the production meetings. We did get an article in the Journal of Extension. It took a little while to get that one published, but it was published just this last year. But the one that I wanted to focus on next was the Georgia Farmer and Mental Wellbeing Study by some colleagues at Mercer. Dr. Stephanie Basie, at the time she was a PhD candidate and wasn't a doctor, and then Dr. Ann Montgomery. And one of the things they did is they surveyed, and I'm going to just sit on that for just a second. They surveyed about 1,600 farm workers and farm owners. And some of the research that they found was really astounding. Just a couple of things I'll tell you real quick before I turn it over to Ben is that 9% of first generation farmers were thinking about suicide daily. And this data was collected in 2022. And so it was pretty recent, really large sample. You had, I want to say it was close to 40% had thought about it, at least in the suicide at least once in the last year. It's a very rich database. And so I encourage you, if you're interested in this work, that you go out and look at that study. And if you want to email me, I'm happy to send it to you. So I'm going to pass the baton to Ben for a minute to tell us a little bit about, from his perspective, how all this works.
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, my name is Benjamin. I appreciate y'all giving me this platform to talk with y'all today. I work in Berrien County, Georgia. It's rural South Central Georgia. If you know where Tifton and Valdosta is, we're kind of wedged in between the two. And if you don't know, if you're not familiar with South Georgia or where those two places are, you can see us on the map. We're a pretty agriculturally diverse community. We grow your traditional row crops like peanuts, cotton, soybeans, and corn. We do tobacco. We've got your specialty crops like citrus trees, pecans, watermelons, and a few other vegetables like tomatoes. My role as an extension agent is I handle calls from all those crops. I also handle calls from homeowners, which will relate to like pond management, yard management, flowers in the nursery landscape, stuff like that. And it's an interesting position to be in because you start out, when you first start, you get calls and you're really just firing off answers to questions. But as time goes on, as your roots sort of spread in your community, you're going to naturally start to talk about, other things, like you get to know people better and, become friends with people in your community. So she mentioned before about the production meetings. They hired Jennifer. When they hire you, about 2019?
Yeah, thereabouts.
And I know you've moved on to greener pastures now, but when y'all started that pilot program, the first couple of years, and she approached me in the winter of 2023 about speaking in Berrien County. I do about 5 of those production meetings. I do pecan, cotton, peanut, tobacco, and a row crop weed science meeting. And I can't express how valuable those meetings are to the community. It brings people together, for starters. We break bread, but it also facilitates like an exchange of ideas, an exchange of problems that our specialists can also like feed off of. So she approached me about coming to Berrien County in winter 2023. And yeah, I didn't really want to do it. I was going to do it, but I was extremely apprehensive about it. I'm just your regular Joe, didn't grow up really talking about my feelings. And I don't think that's anything like out of the ordinary. But I said, I want to help you out. Let's try it out on at our pecan production meeting. And we've kind of got a diverse group of people in pecan production here in Berrien County. We've got grower who grows several thousand acres, and we've got people that, farm pecans on the side. We've got people that, just they tend to trees that have been in their yard for, 50, 60 years. And all those people, merit coming to a pecan production meeting. So I said, come on, let's try this. And coincidentally, there's a pecan grower in the county who's also a doctor. So I called him and said, would you be okay with facilitating these blood pressure checks at this meeting? And he said, of course. And we did it. I forget how many people did blood pressure checks. It was about 25 to 30, somewhere in that range. And I thought they were going to boo her out of the room. But I'm going to kind of toot Jennifer's horn a little bit here. The role of this position, you kind of need somebody. It can probably be a thankless job at times. It's tough subject matter. and especially in a rural community, but I feel like she's really good with, just being personable and expressing, kind of diving into some of these tough subject matters in a group of people. And I thought she did extremely well. There was a lot of, positive dialogue, a lot of communication after the meeting. She stayed around and talked to everybody. And I was just pretty impressed with how the meeting went. And we kind of going forward into the winter of 2024, between 2023 and 2024, we've had like low commodity prices. We had a Hurricane Idalia, and also had a couple incidences. People in the community had heart attacks, and I know that could be a multitude of reasons for that, like health or genetics. But I figured, having her back and talking about stress again, it wouldn't hurt at the very least. So my perception kind of changed from year one to year two of, hesitancy and apprehension to, I really want you back here. So she came back and we did a peanut meeting. It was about 60 people. We did not do blood pressure checks. And it was, once again, I thought they were going to throw rotten tomatoes at her and tell her to get out of the room, but no, she did a great job. There's a lot of dialogue. Like I said, she did a great job. So just kind of, I mentioned before, you need to kind of a certain specific person, a special type of person to, work this job in extension. I really do feel like there's a lot of merit to it. As I mentioned before, you're in your community, and especially this time of the year, I'm on my phone all day talking to people, and we talk about different things besides crop production, football, what are we doing on the weekends, fishing, church, stuff like that. And I think it can be an organic thing for uncomfortable topics like this to come up, as we're just communicating with, our community. And I think, there's a lot of merit to extension kind of having a role with something like this, because my background isn't in, psychiatry or mental health or stress. My background's in agricultural pest management. That's my specialty. So I think for me to be able to say, hey, something like that comes up, where while I might not be comfortable talking about it, I have somebody you can contact. So here's some pictures here. We got hit on the southern end of the county in Idalia. There's just one. I don't think you can make a list of the things, there's just it keeps going on, things that could stress a farmer out, like a hurricane, crop prices, input prices, weather. This year we had about 20 inches of rain in May. And then it kind of turned off dry in June. It's just been a funky year weather-wise. So it just, things that stress, they're just completely out of our control, like she mentioned before. The list goes on. That's about all I had to say. I'll stay around, and like I said, appreciate y'all having me.
So, so this picture right here, that's a couple of the folks from the peanut commodity group that sponsored one of Ben's meetings, and our what is the specialist? What's his actual title? Scott.
The pecan specialist?
Yeah. No, the one right here in the picture. Do you see the picture?
On the bottom right or the top one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Scott Mumford. He's the peanut.
Scott. What's his job?
Oh, he's the peanut agronomist.
He's the agronomist. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And he also has a podcast. I always plug his podcast. It's called All About the Pod. So
All About the Pod.
Yep. So
yes,
this was this year. So this was earlier this year. And then like Ben mentioned, we had Hurricane Idalia. And one of the things, before I go on to talk a little bit more about the data, a lot of people may not know about 988, but I'm hoping a lot of people do know about it. It is the suicide prevention lifeline, mental health lifeline. It's a national lifeline, but if you're in Georgia and you call 988, it routes to our Georgia folks. And I happen to, our data for 988 is available to anybody in the public. You can Google 988 Georgia data. But right after Hurricane Idalia, I decided to look at where folks were calling from. You can filter it by location. And one of the things I noticed was the counties that got hit by Idalia, we had an increase in calls for those summer months, which is not surprising. So we're looking at how do we take information like what's going on with weather, what's going on with crops, bankruptcies, things like that, and then kind of layer it onto data that we have from our mental health world. And what we're seeing is it's correlated. So I just wanted to say that. I also wanted to say, you know, Ben's experience of, I'm not sure I want this lady to come talk at my meeting he's not alone. He's one of many where they're like, what's she going to say? How long is she going to talk? Right, Ben? I mean,
It's uncomfortable.
yeah.
It's kind of uncharted territory for a lot of us.
But it wasn't bad. And so, you know, I didn't pay him to say that it wasn't bad. It really turns out to be okay. And it does open up a dialogue with producers because they're actually pretty willing to talk about it. You know, it always surprises people. They're like, I didn't think my guys would talk about it, or my gals would sit around and talk about it. So, they're not just calling me, but they're calling each other. Sometimes they'll call the agronomist. You know, one thing we've noticed with the economists, when they come, they put up like on the screen, like a spreadsheet that shows what's going on. And a lot of times farmers will point to that and they'll look at me because I stick around for the whole meeting. And they're like, I wasn't stressed out until I saw that. Now I'm really stressed out because, you know, it goes into the red when they're looking at, you know, kind of predictions for where we're going to be. So the other thing we're trying to do is get our mental health professionals to understand why farming is stressful, why working in this field can be isolative. You know, they're isolated a lot of times. And so just wanted to throw that out there that Ben's not alone. The last article that we published with Dr. Chayette I told you a little bit about this earlier. This was about, these are the questions we asked. So after I do my 5 to 20 minute speaking event, depending on if I've been in the county before or if it's my first time in the county, I give them these questions. Did you ever think about, you know, needing to manage your stress before and then after? And you can see the results. And this is from 2023. We're looking at the results from 2024 now, but it's looking pretty good, meaning that people are actually thinking about adding some coping strategies that we talk about in the meeting to their daily lives. And just, you know, to let you know, I'll be in the grocery store and sometimes a spouse of a farmer will walk up to me and say, you know, I didn't go to the meeting, but my husband went and he talked about you being in there. And, you know, it allowed us to have a different kind of conversation when he came home. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This is some more information from Chrissy and Noah's study about it's easier to go to the beer store than to ask for help. 80% of the participants that they surveyed, again, theirs was qualitative, you know, talked about lack of sleep and some physical consequences. There was some post-traumatic stress disorder where either they sustained an injury themselves or they witnessed another farmer having an accident while working. And of course, physical injuries like ulcers, acid reflux, injuries from farm equipment, that sort of thing. And one of our flyers that we have, this came out of a meeting. I was at a meeting and one of the agents, one of Ben's counterparts, I had asked, I don't remember the question I asked, but the farmer said, I can fix everything on my farm. I'm a mechanic. Now I'm an accountant, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I can fix everything. And one of the agents said, but can you fix yourself? And so we created this folder this flyer that says, you are the most important asset to your farm. And it's got a QR code and it's got a phone number in case they do want to reach out and talk to somebody. And on the back, we have links to their local county extension office. So if they needed to talk to their county agent like Ben, we also have family and consumer science agents in many of our counties that can provide like nutrition resources and financial resources. We also link to the Rural Georgia Growing Stronger site. We have the Georgia Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. And then we have when an emergency hits, because we always know that that's a really stressful time is, you know, if a tornado has hit, if they're preparing for a hurricane, and the best time to do all that work is prior to an emergency hitting. So we try to remind people of this, you know, in those off months that Ben talked about, which are January to March. And as you can see, the other information on this slide here, 67% of farmers preferred to receive their services through their primary care physician. And 80% said they would feel comfortable talking about their mental health issues to their primary care physician. Because a lot of times what I hear from farmers is, I live in X county and we only have 3,000 people in that county. If my truck is at the mental health center, I drive the Dodge Red 250. I don't want my truck sitting outside of the mental health center or even the health department. But where they would drive to is their extension office, because they might go up there and be taking a water sample, So we're trying to figure out ways to have them connecting with our resources in our extension locations. This past year, we have what's called the Sunbelt Expo, and farmers from all over come to that. And so we decided to survey them and to say, because what's been coming up a lot lately is financial stuff. They're really stressed out about financial stuff. So we gave them about 15 choices, maybe not 15, maybe it was 12. I'm trying to remember, but these are the 3 that popped out that they said they wanted more information about. They wanted programs to help a farmer after a disaster, government programs to help farmers financially, and information on insurance like health insurance, life insurance, and disability insurance. So we're currently working on having some of those resources available. So I always say, let's take a breath before we talk about suicide. And I have a video, but I don't think it can show. So I'm just going to tell you about it. Marshall Sewell is a farmer who also works for Pfizer as a rep, and he lives in Plant City, Florida, and grows strawberries. And his dad died by suicide when he was a senior in high school. And so those 2 videos, which I'll put in the chat for anybody to go back and watch, they're real short, but Marshall has come and talked to us, and he's done some like public service announcements and some really cool videos talking about his own story and how he has managed with dealing with the after effects of losing his dad to suicide. He has a podcast called Mind Your Melon. He has a campaign that he and his wife started called Mind Your Melon, and it's very, very interesting, cool stuff. And if you haven't had a chance to find him online, I'm going to encourage you to do so. But this slide here talks about the suicide rates that the CDC put out just this past December. So we're seeing this more and more. So I just like for everybody to take a deep breath when we're thinking about that. This was the information I referenced earlier, the data that Dr. Montgomery and Stephanie Beasley put out. Again, it was January to April. I actually would take their survey and hand it out at the production meetings I went to. They had, 1,651 participants. Georgia has 159 counties, and they were able to collect data from 157 counties, which is really unheard of. They did do some, interviews, so like some specialized interviews, so it wasn't all just quantitative. But what popped out for me, so I pulled this out of that data, is 42% of all farmers in Georgia had thought about dying by suicide at least once in the past year, 29% at least once in the last month. So that's a lot. And I already mentioned the 9% of first generation farmers thinking about it daily. 46% of first generation farmers and 50% of farm managers thought about it at least once in the last month. That's just too much. That's just too many people that are thinking about it. That tells me, this farm stress stuff is something we really need to pay attention to. So I'm encouraging everybody, if you don't know, if you want to talk more about how we're doing this in Georgia, please reach out, because I think this is a program, and you can link it like we're trying to with, high blood pressure, because that's a little bit easier to talk about. So when you have the blood pressure checks, you can talk a little bit more about, stress and high blood pressure. This is another slide that talks about the peer network. So where they're, who are their peers? Where do they go for their protective factors? And again, Farm Bureau plays a role in this. So we've been partnering with them a lot, their family, their spouses, their community, like their churches. And, one of the things that came up during COVID was the places farmers would go to talk to each other, which would be church, restaurants, things like that, were not available to them. So we did see some, some folks that were extra stressed during COVID. And this is just another, there's so much data in this data set. I think I did put a couple of links in the chat, but I mean, I just encourage anybody to go look at it because it's got so much information about what farmers are saying are their top stressors. You see the top stressors that came out here was balancing home and work life, because many of the farmers, this is what they're doing. Dr. Anna Chayette did a focus group with the farmers' wives, and I believe she has got an article. I can link to that as well. But the wives have been an amazing resource, to help us understand what's going on at home. So I always try to end with, what can you do? We do have, if I'm in Georgia, this is the slide I put up, because you can reach out to your local UGA extension office. We have a Thriving on the Farm blog that Dr. Anna Chayette writes. It comes out every Monday. It just gives quick tips for reducing stress. I do encourage our mental health professionals, if there are any on the line today, to reach out to your ag communities, to figure out what you can do to help them. Just know that they might not be super receptive at first, because they might be uncomfortable talking about this, but that's why you're there. If you want to offer mental health first aid classes or QPR classes, I know a lot of people do that. And I did put a QR code. If you wanted to join our Thriving on the Farm blog, I have it there. We also started a Georgia Agricultural Wellness Alliance. This is with the folks at UGA. It's with Georgia Farm Bureau, Department of Ag. It's with my agency, Department of Behavioral Health. It's with Mercer, Georgia Southern, which is out of Statesboro. We've got lots of university folks. We got lots of private folks. We've got lots of different groups. I'm missing a bunch, I know, as I'm telling you that. But that is our Georgia Agricultural Wellness Alliance, and we're kind of like a think tank to figure out how do we get this message out there. We did do farm stress summits. We did the first one in 2022. We did one in 2023. And then we did one this year in 2024. We had them at various places around the state. So we started in South Georgia, then we went to Middle Georgia, then we went to the way top of the state this year in Jasper. And next year we're planning for coastal Georgia. So those are really good places where we intermingle ag and mental health folks together. We also are presenting at Mental Health Day at the Capitol. And so the commissioner, who's my boss, he's in the middle. He's actually a chicken farmer. So that makes it real easy for us to prioritize this work, because it is very important. And Tyler Harper, who is amazing, such an engaging speaker. And so he has also spoken. So, it's really funny to me, because all the mental health folks are like, I never thought I'd be at Mental Health Day at the Capitol and hear from Department of Ag. And so we're trying to get these two groups to work together. Here's just some 988 data, 988 images. And we are kind of circulating those as we do some of our work. But I do have our contact information here. So if you wanted to contact me or Ben, and I think I'm ending right where I wanted to, which is time for questions. So I'm going to stop here and see what kind of questions you have.
Okay, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can type your question into chat. If you have any. I don't see any in chat yet.
Somebody asked for the Thriving on the Farm blog, so I'm gonna put that in the chat.
Okay, and Karen Endress just said, great presentation. Would you, whoops, it jumped on me. Would you be able to share your slides? So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think what we'll have the recording and the slides posted on agrability.org, but yeah, Jennifer, if you want to send them out to anybody personally, that's fine too.
Okay.
What is the date of your Farm Stress Summit 2025?
We're looking at, the first year we did May, we are looking at March. March is, tends to be when more farmers and producers can attend, just because it's, right around before they start planting, and, we're trying to stay out of their way and get them to come. So it will be in March of 2025. We don't have the exact date yet, but if you want to email me, and I'll make sure you have the date as soon as we have it. We're looking at the, like I said, coastal Georgia area.
Okay. Karen Endress also says, how often does the Alliance meet?
That's a good question. We try to meet, we were meeting monthly. We worked a whole lot last year on building a strategic plan. So right now we're meeting quarterly, but the Alliance is who's putting on that Farm Stress Summit. So I have a feeling, we had an email chain between the Alliance members the other day that we're going to start meeting monthly, just so we can get all of our sponsors and all of our presenters. We usually have like panel discussions. We'll have a veteran farmer. We'll have, we want a good mix of people. So if you are in Georgia, or even if you're not, if you're in another state and you're like, we did something similar and this is who we had on our panels, we're planning that right now. So we will probably start to meet monthly beginning in August.
Okay. Beth Archer says, are you willing to share your agenda for the Mental Health Day program?
Oh, yeah, sure. If you could shoot me an email, I will absolutely send it to you.
Okay. And then Alexander Chan asks, what knowledge gaps do you think exist based on the current state of research in mental health of farmers?
So that's a really good question. A lot of people are really interested in this topic right now. And I was talking to a group the other day, and one thing that, and maybe I'm, biased, or I sit on the Georgia Farm Worker Healthcare Board. So we have we have a lot of migrant farm workers in our state, and I don't think anybody's talking to them or getting their perspective. And so I would say that's probably a gap.
And Eileen commented, please don't have the Farm Stress Summit when we have the National AgrAbility Workshop.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that right now.
March 24th through the 27th of 2025 will be in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Well, having been at the AgrAbility workshop this past year, it was so much fun, and I will definitely be going to that.
Great.
So yes, so I will make sure, because I've got to be at the Farm Stress Summit too. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Perfect. All right. I don't see any more questions at the moment, and I don't see anyone's hand raised. All right. So if there aren't any more questions, I guess we can end.